There we go. Oh yeah. Right, Malcolm's Falkner family history presentation.
Ready to go?
Just plug the power in just in case. Should be.
Yeah. Take unplug mine.
I'm going to put the mains back in. Do you want the mouse?
No, I'll be all right without it sitting here. Oh no, I could do with the mouse. Actually, I could do with it actually, David.
Malcolm's presentation is so popular. Fighting over the best seats. Fighting over the best seats.
Right. I can use it as a pointer. That's what's helpful. Us use it as a pointer.
All right.
Yep, lovely.
Right.
Right. You ready to take it away?
Yes.
Oh
yeah, I'll turn it down.
So I hope you'll find this interesting, but I really won't be offended at all if any of you want to play on your mobile phones, go for a walk, read a book. Yeah, especially the in-laws. I'll be a little bit more concerned about the cousins, but so feel free. If absolutely. So so if it's not floating your boat, then don't worry. Go and by all means do something else. Okay. Anyway, before I get going, well, you've all seen this photo, so that's great. So what I was going to say was, if you know anyone on this that we don't know, then let me know. But then we've seen an annotated version, so that's great. So that's another photo that, well, we've all seen, but there we are, 8 of us outside Grandma and Grandpa Falkner's house at 647 Hagley Road, Winton.
Yeah, got my action man with me.
And David's got his action man, and Andrew's got his broken arm underneath under there is a broken arm. And there we go. Right, okay, so having done reasonably up to date, what I thought I'd start with was just showing you some origins, where we've come from, as far back as I can on the different lines, so that we can see how everything gravitated towards London, because as you're all aware, our grandparents met in London. Norah and Leslie, they met in London, married in London. So clearly both sides of their families gravitated towards London over the years. And so this is looking at how the different strands of the family effectively moved towards London as far as I've got it traced. So I'll be coming back to this several times. So what you've got there is one column per generation. So you've got my mother there, and of course Auntie Ruth and Uncle David would fit in that box as well. Then we've got their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents. So this is basically the people that I'm going to be working round and through as we go through it. So I'll be coming back to this rewind. So let's start off with the Falkners themselves, and where did they originate? Well, it all comes back to this little village on the Welsh borders called Hopton Wafers. That's as far back as I've got. Only a little tiny place. That's where we believe the Falkners were in the oh, by the way, do chip in. So I think they were there. They were there at least in the 1700s, and who knows how much further back.
With that same before that, without the U. Faulkner, without the U.
Oh yeah, Faulkner without U. I'll address that straight away. yeah, it's amazing given how much surnames can vary as you go back over the years, especially when you get back into the 1700s, when it was a lot of it was by word of mouth, and the clergyman just wrote down whatever he was told because everyone else was illiterate. So, but it's amazing how Falkner has permeated all the way through. Just occasionally you'll see on a census or something like Faulk, but it quickly comes back to Falk again. So it's really given the similarity and the more common nature of Faulk. It's amazing how Falk has really held its ground, there doesn't seem to be any great changes there, which is completely different when you get onto the Addiscott.
It's a real disappointment.
Is it?
Because former chief executive Falkner with a U.
Yeah.
I thought he might be related.
I think you can be fairly confident that he isn't. Yeah. So we start in Hopton Wafers, and then somewhere in around 1760, one of our Falkners decided he'd move right across the country to Market Harborough. I think he was a cobbler, and he could see that the shoe industry was really burgeoning over in Northamptonshire and Leicestershire, and over he went to Market Harborough. And another thing that permeates the whole of this, of course, is nonconformity and Calvinistic Baptists in particular. And the records of the Falkner family in Market Harborough are all in nonconformist records. They're not in Anglican records. And then in 1790, our particular strand, Edward Falkner, he decided he'd have enough of Market Harborough quite quickly, and off he went to seek his fortune in London. So the Falkners actually got to London in 1790. Edward Falkner born in 1775, I think, so he was quite young. I think he went there on an apprenticeship. For the most part, he was involved with excise, and that's why he moved to the South Bank between what is now London Bridge and Tower Bridge. A lot of imports coming in to that part of London at that time, and he was an excise officer down there, and he also got involved in being a coal merchant as well. So he was sort of a man of quite varied.
Was that his cover, Malcolm?
I don't know. perhaps it was. Could well have been for the excise, yes. Yeah. So there's quite a few records of his, actually the official records, being an excise duty officer. He's there in various records. He lived in Churchyard Alley, just off what is Tooley Street. Churchyard Alley is now underneath London Bridge Station, lost and gone forever. But that's where he lived, attended the Nonconformist Baptist Chapel there in Churchyard Alley, and had his family there in Churchyard Alley coming through the generations. And they gradually moved southwards in London to get away from the centre. So that's how the Falkners got to London. They were there in about 1790. Falkner distribution. This is how they distributed around the country by county in 1841, which is the first accurate time we know where they were, because that's when the first full official census was carried out. And you can see the Falkners there in the darker colours in Northamptonshire, which is where even though our Falkner moved to London, the Falkners really got embedded in the Northamptonshire area, and there was a lot of Falkners there in the 1840s, and they stayed there whilst ours went south. Surrey as well, Falkners in Surrey, so there's quite a large contingent of Falkners in Surrey. I haven't got through to exactly how they're connected to us, but they also almost certainly came from Northamptonshire as well, but very disconnected from us really. In 1911, just more widely dispersed, things haven't changed that much, more over in Leicestershire now and Lincolnshire rather than in Northamptonshire, and you can see the Surrey Falkners really starting to get very established as well by 1911. So you've got these two Falkner enclaves really of the East Midlands and London and to the south. So moving on now to the beaches. So this is you can see there Emma Beach married John William Falkner, Walter's father, our great grandfather's father. So this is Leslie's grandparents. His grandmother was Emma Beach. The beaches, you know, they're potentially quite a well-to-do family. They were. What's really interesting though is that our beaches came all the way from Bengeworth, which is now really just a suburb of Evesham. It was a separate village at the time in 1804. Came down to London, two brothers, and the family. Grapevine has it that it was to do with stagecoaching that they came down to London, that somehow they got involved with stagecoaching. So they're probably that's right. So the excise and the highwaymen and the coaching obviously goes together. And they eventually, after about 10 years or so in London, well, I'm not exactly sure what they were doing. I think they were at Westminster at one point. They got into the leather industry in Bermondsey. So Bermondsey leather tanning was what Bermondsey was all about in the early 1800s. And they got jobs in the leather tanning industry in Bermondsey, which obviously wasn't a million miles away from where Edward Falkner had his setup. So right from this time, 1804, the Falkners and the Beaches were living cheek by jowl with each other in South London, and almost certainly rubbing shoulders with each other through the Baptist churches there. But it's believed that they came from Keevil in Wiltshire originally to go up to Bengeworth around 1710. Now this is where we're getting into the area of records being not entirely 100%. So there's a certain amount of speculation about that, but it's reasonably well established, and it's certainly in the family folklore that the Beaches did come originally from Wiltshire. And if they did, then this was really quite a well-to-do family around Wiltshire. They came from the Fittleton area, which is not far from Devizes, or no, Warminster, more near Warminster, in around 1680. And if this is the right family, then they can be traced back really right back to the Norman conquest. De la Beche was the surname of the people that came over in the Norman conquest, and you know, there's reasonably good records that that's right. So if this link from Keevil to Bengeworth is right, then really there's substantial information about the family when it was down in Wiltshire that I haven't got into in terrific detail, but that's certainly one strand of the family that we could potentially go back a long way on, and there's quite a lot written. And how do we know they came from Bengeworth? This is where the censuses are very useful. That's from 1851. Right on the right hand side, you had to give where you were born, and so anyone alive at the 1851 census, you know where they originated from. And there we've got William Beach, living in Bermondsey, but coming from, it says Evesham there, Evesham, Worcester. But if you look through the parish records, it's actually Bengeworth. And you can't read that, but his wife came from a little village called Snitterfield, which is just to the north of Stratford-on-Avon. And so somehow or other, again, these things we don't know, somehow or other, they got together. They would have been living about 20 odd miles apart, which was quite a distance in those days. But they somehow managed to have their paths crossed. And so we know for certain that our Beaches originated in Worcestershire. The Crowhursts, so this is going down onto Grandpa Falkner's mother's side of the family now. We know an awful lot about them through the diary that this guy wrote, our four greats grandfather, and his son Phoebe Crowhurst also, his son, the brother of Phoebe Crowhurst, also wrote a diary. So we've got two diaries from these two generations, which tell us a phenomenal amount about the Crowhurst side of the family. And I won't go into that in any detail here because it's all there in the various things. And the diary, the Crowhurst diaries, I'm sure I've got them there in the box, but they're published and you can get them off Lulu. So the Crowhursts, we're down in Kent area now. In 1815, the Samuel Crowhurst, our four greats grandfather, left Harvel to take up an apprenticeship, would you believe it, in the southern part of London, working for an uncle in carpentry, and that's what kicked off the Crowhurst family actually being in London. He had an apprenticeship with his uncle. The family came to Harvel from a village called Plaxtall, which is just to the east of Sevenoaks, in 1715. And prior to that, they moved up from Frant in Sussex and just south of Tunbridge Wells. And again, you can go back into Tudor times with the Crowhursts actually living at Frant in Sussex. So we can get the Crowhursts back to Tudor times. Very, very concentrated in Kent and Sussex. In 1841, you can see just a few odd people elsewhere. And that didn't really change. A little bit of movement over the next 70 years, but still heavily Kent, Sussex, and this move into London. The Weeks family, well, we know about them because through the Crowhurst diary. So Elizabeth Weeks, Samuel Crowhurst's wife, she originated all the way down here in the South Hams of Devon. Kingsbridge, out to sea here, and Salcombe is just here off the bottom. And basically, if you go to this part of the country, Sherford was the last or the main place where they where Elizabeth Weeks lived. But various of her family lived at Sherford for many years before. The house she lived in has actually had a little booklet written about it, and it's still there. Sandra went and saw it only a few weeks ago. Recently been renovated. If you want to have a look at what the inside looks like, it's Brook House, and it's there on Zoopla to go and have a look at. But other villages, Southpool, again, is where they came from. Chillington, you hear all of these names mentioned, and Dodbrook. There is now a sort of little suburb of Kingsbridge. So this whole area is where the Weekses were certainly in the 1700s. But Elizabeth decided she was going to go and seek her fortune in London again. 1824, she moved up to London. Prior to that, she went to live with an aunt in Plymouth. She would have only been 9 when she actually went from Sherford to live with this aunt in Plymouth, and then she moved up to London. Now, one of her brothers moved up to London a little bit before her. Exactly why she went to London cannot be sure. I know she sat under the pastoral ministry of David Denham when she was at Plymouth, and about the same time as she went to London, he took up a pastorate at the other church in Tooley Street, Unicorn Yard in Tooley Street. So it's just possible that her move to London was in some way associated with David Denham, the minister's move to London from Plymouth. Again, these things you just have to speculate on some of these things. Nothing can be sure. The other ones on that side of the family, in terms of where they came from, I mean, the Greens are very hard to do. They're like the Lees and the Joneses, just so many of them. But I'm pretty certain we've got, the Greens sorted down this far. They were all in London. The Buxtons, they came from the west of London out towards Richmond. and the Mitchells were also to the west of London. But these are all pretty much London families as far back as I've traced them. So they were all sitting there in London right from the word go. Ireson is an interesting name. So few, you can't read this very well, but these are ones and twos. So in 1841, there was just our family of Iresons in London, and another one in a couple of families up in Norfolk, and another one over there in Gloucestershire. So you know, that was really rare, very rare.
What's the Ireson link?
Whoops, gone the wrong way. The Iresons are here, married into the Beeches.
Right.
John Beech. John Beech, who was the son of the person that came down from Bengeworth. John Beech, he was in the leather industry, and married Elizabeth Ireson. Again, that would all be through the Baptist Church. But if you do IRE instead of IER, you get a lot more of them. And going back prior to that, certainly there'd been an awful lot of mixing up, and you can see there's a lot more of them. And hey ho, we've got Northamptonshire popping up here, albeit on the other side of the family. So who knows whether the Ireson relations knew the Falkner relations when they were all up in Northamptonshire. You'll never know, probably. The Buxtons, again, not surprisingly, mainly originated from the Buxton area. So somewhere back beyond where I've traced, we may have relations from up in that part of Derbyshire. And the Mitchells, quite a common name, so all over the place. But again, Yorkshire, Lancashire, possibly going up into Scotland, who knows where our London Mitchells actually originated from. So you can't really tell a lot from that as to what the actual origins might be of the Mitchell family. But those are certainly where the enclaves were. Moving on to the Addiscott side of the family. The main Addiscotts, this is quite an interesting odyssey around Devon. Ours came from Stoke Gabriel into Plymouth in about 1800 to work in the dockyard. Definitely the dockyard was the pull from Stoke Gabriel, but they weren't there long. They only come down from Bury Pomeroy near Totnes in 1760. And prior to that, from Holme, little village near Ashburton, up in Dartmoor, in 1735. Quite a lot of information about them at Holme while they were there. They were things like overseers of the poor and that sort of thing, and they've got records in the manorial records there, but often it's Addiscott rather than Addiscott, ARSCOTT. That seemed to be used quite interchangeably, Addiscott and Addiscott. One thing that there seems to be no connection to is Addicotts. So you can forget Addicotts, even though there's quite a lot of them around. But it's Addiscott. We're potentially related to Addiscotts, but not Addicotts. And it was at Holme that some of them are down as Addicotts, because we're sort of in the early 1700s here, where there's all this word of mouth of using names. There's a little hamlet called Addiscott just outside Oakhampton, and it seems to be that Andrew Addiscott moved from there down to Holme in around 1620. Why, I don't know. Addiscott, the village of Addiscott is nothing much now, because it seemed to keep getting burnt down. It was burnt, I can't remember exactly when it was last burnt down, but clearly you've only got to have a whole village being set fire to, and it's very, very difficult to revive. Fire seems to be quite something that helps paint family history quite often when fires happen. So there's this very, very small hamlet of Addiscott there now. It's barely a few farms, but it seems to be the origin. Potentially Morton Hampstead. There's a farm called Addiscott Farm still there, just to the north of Morton Hampstead. and some fellow genealogists seem to think that the Addiscotts came from Morton Hampstead. There almost certainly was probably some interchange between Addiscotts at Addiscott and Morton Hampstead. So there's quite a reasonable amount of information, and going right back into early Stuart times for the Addiscotts. The Plymouth they went to is nothing like the Plymouth we've got these days. It was really 3 or 4 different villages. So you've got Plymouth itself, you've got Stonehouse here, you've got what was known then as Dock, which is what we would call Devonport now, and then you've got Stoke, which is up here, and just marked here is Stoke Church. This was effectively the parish church for Devonport. So any marriages and so on taking place of our relations in this part of the world tended to take place at Stoke Church here, still there, whereas Plymouth had its own churches, Charles and St Andrews. So that's the Plymouth that they were moving to. And so finally, what we've got is the Addiscotts moving up to London in 1890. I've written a little bit about this. This was William Richard Addiscott, Grandma Falkner's father, moved up in 1890, got married to Beatrice Rocket in 1893, I think 1892, 93. But he followed the Rockets. The Rockets went up first, and yeah, that's right. Yeah, so they went up first, and the Rockets followed on. Sorry, the Rockets went up first, and the Addiscotts followed. I mean, obviously, what's interesting is that they must have known each other at Plymouth. Our great grandparents must have known each other at Plymouth before they left. And off went Beatrice. I can say a little bit more about that later on, TV. But there must have been some sort of very long distance courtship going on here for quite a while before William actually went up and joined her, and actually lived in the same house, 181 Norwood Road, prior to their marriage. Yes. Well, there's another skeleton in the cupboard there as far as William's concerned. Which, if I do the next bit, you'll hear all about, but if I don't, you won't. Some went to Portsea, not surprisingly, the connection with the dockyards, and equally others, even prior to that, were going up to Chatham. And there's quite a big, come the end of the 1800s, there's quite a big Falkner contingent around the Chatham area. But you know, one of the most interesting ones is one of the families decided to forego working in the dockyard or working on ships and go up to Aberdare and try their fortune down the coal mines. So and you know, there's still a few Addiscotts knocking about in the Welsh valleys from that particular. And I think some also went to join them from Chatham.
The coal mines, they were pretty tough down.
Well, yeah, you think why what was the draw of the South Wales coalfields? I just don't know. Probably won't know.
It might have been their engineering capability rather than mining itself.
Possibly, it might not. They might not have been down on the coal face.
Yeah,
And the pitch they used the prop.
Yeah, well, and the steam engines to clear the mines and so on. And they were fitters down. They were engine fitters down in those who actually worked in the dockyard were engine fitters.
So there's quite a strong.
So that could well have been it. Thank you, Paul. I'll put that down in the family history annals.
Possibility.
Yeah.
So they followed the money.
Yeah. So Addiscott's very, very rare name, as you're aware. So back in 1841, this was the sum total of where the Addiscotts lived, and spread out a little bit is obviously the South Wales contingent, but we're going to be related to all of these Addiscotts dotted around the country. I've yet to find an Addiscott that we're not related to, and this is, although it's down in Kent, this is the dockyard. Kent, and of course moving down into Surrey, getting out of London, but falling away in Devon. So they all moved out. That's right. Devon wasn't for them. Then the Rockets. So these went up to London in about 1880. Reason I'm not really sure. Again, they seem to get into things like signalling on the railways, and so they were certainly doing a bit of engineering and that sort of thing on the railways. Rather clearly, there's something about the dockyard that was just not having its attractions towards the end of the 1800s. I believe they came from Newton Abbot, but this is again a little bit speculative, but I believe they came from Newton Abbot. These were the more non-conformist side of the family than the Addiscotts. The Rockets were worshipping at the various Baptist chapels in Devonport right from the time known and the births of this particular Addiscott, moved in 1775, again as an independent chapel at Newton Abbot. And they seem to be moving down from Exeter. I'm stuck back from then on the Rockets, but there's a lot of Rockets on the Devon-Dorset border in Hawkchurch and Musbury and so on, lots of Rockets there. So whether there is a trace back to this quite strong enclave of Rockets on the Dorset-Devon border, I don't know, but there's certainly Rockets around there, and we're sort of gravitating back in that direction. So that's where they came. So distribution, very two clear distributions of Rockets. So there's clearly a Yorkshire family, as far as I know is unrelated. Then you've got these Devon and Dorset Rockets down south with a few others about in between, and not a lot's changed apart from London again increasing as it inexorably did. But still with this strong northern and strong southwestern Rocket distribution. Adams, very common name, so quite difficult to trace back too far. The main one I know is our Adams actually came from across the border in Cornwall, so got a little bit of Cornish blood in us. Botus Fleming, village Botus Fleming up here. They came obviously over through Saltash to live in Plymouth in 1825. Derry, Pitts, Bess, Minns, these are all Devon people as far back as I know them, and not a lot to say here. The Derrys seem to come from Staffordshire, and the Pitts is again this sort of double enclave between Yorkshire and Devon. The Bess family seem to come from Bristol area, and the Minns is an interesting one all the way over from Norfolk. So if there is a origin point for the Minns, it seems to be over there. Right, so that's the overview of where all the different strands have come from. Now, if you're happy for me to carry on, we'll start going backwards a bit now. Looking at our parents and grandparents. So there's the family at Ripley Road. I think it's probably about 1952, 53. It might be just before Auntie Ruth got married. Certainly around and just before, yeah, Ripley Road in Worthing. So, 17. So that's our grandparents just before they got married, as we don't remember them, and this is them more as we will remember them. Yes, yeah. Before he had alopecia, yeah, yes, had alopecia in it.
Yeah.
So
Leaving Grecian.
there they are. This is the only picture that I know of, and I think Mum said it was the only one she knew of their wedding. This is outside 225 Norwood Road, where Grandma was born and bred. Yeah. I'm pretty certain this is either Donald or Joe Simons. which will be Grandpa Falkner's nephew, his sister's son. But if anyone can tell me who this young lady is, that'd be great. Like to know who she is. I think it's probably, she's sort of got an Addiscott-y face, so something Addiscott-y. This would be 1927.
Mum didn't know then. Mum didn't.
No, well, if she did, I've forgotten.
Yeah.
She may well have known, but I just you know, I haven't got it. Basically, it's not.
That house having been there, Mel, you know, it's big. It would have been a big,
Oh yeah, big.
four-story,
Yeah.
detached house with
Semi-detached.
in the basement. Semi-detached.
Semi-detached. Yeah,
Big.
yeah.
So it's really odd that how they managed to move from their various country locations into London.
Yeah, how that.
And move into a house that big.
Yeah.
And then to suddenly have
It is. Yeah.
to have at least 2 members of staff.
They really came up in the world very, very quickly, and I'm not quite sure how.
Combination of stage reaction.
Well, the Falkner, again, if I come on to it, you know, the Falkner's quite wealthy.
He was, so Grandma's Falkner was a lawyer or
Grandma, yeah,
that's right.
yeah, he worked for Lumley and Lumley, a solicitors company in the city. Yeah, he was a legal executive, effectively. He wasn't a solicitor. Yeah, well, that's right. They you know, they definitely did come up in the world very, very quickly, the Addiscotts. Because his father, so Grandma Falkner's grandfather spent pretty much all his life at sea. I mean, I was going to come on to that, but you know, he was a sailor, engine room artificer in the Royal Navy. Yeah. Anyway, they if I've got the time, I'll come on to it. You know, so there's some interesting shenanigans about around the rockets actually moving up to London.
We'll go through all those hundreds of photos.
Yeah.
When we cleared Mother's house.
Yeah, if you find any more of their wedding, that'd be great. So this is them down at Perryman's Farm in Sussex, enjoying one of their lovely summer breaks down there. This is obviously going to be just around when the war broke out, just before the war, just somewhere around war broke out. There they all are having a great time down in down with the down at Perryman's Farm. This is their marriage certificate. So there we go. We've got Leslie and Norah, October 1927. Grandpa a bank clerk, German bank up in the city he worked for. Can't remember its name now, but if you look at the 1821 census, it's all down there. Where they lived, 225 and Stafford Road, Wadden. Both Walter Falkner here is put down as a builder, but he wasn't really a builder. He was, again, coming on to it in a moment, he was much more of a decorative decorator, things like doing fancy plaster work and that sort of thing. And lawyer's clerk, this says off the thing. They were married at Brixton Tabernacle in Stockwell Road, now demolished, but there is a replacement by the pastor there, Ernest Rowe, and the two fathers were the witnesses on the certificate. This is where they got married, Brixton Tabernacle. So it's Brixton Tabernacle. The site has been redeveloped. The new chapel's opposite, but that's the building they got married in, along with quite a few other related families. So it was quite a honeypot for our Addiscott and Falkner relations. This is Leslie's birth certificate. This is one of the originals. That's why it's looking a bit tattered. So this isn't a takeoff. This is one that was actually issued to the family when he was born, 1904, Stafford Road. There's not really a lot else there that we don't already know. Again, what's useful on the birth certificates is you get the maiden name of the mother, which is really handy when you don't know it. That's where he was born, Rangthorne, 30 Stafford Road, now demolished. There's modern houses there now, but that's where he was born. This is Norah's birth certificate, born at 225, lived there until her marriage. William Rushed, her father, and the proof that her mother was called Rocket. So that's 225. Often heard grandma talking about 225, not 225 or anything like that. It was always 225. And of course that was in the family until her father died in 1939. He died there, and obviously her mother did prior to that. So it was in the family till 1939. Auntie Beattie was living there with them because she was a widow, being widowed by then. Obviously at Brockwell Park, yeah. Grandma obviously used to talk about Brockwell Park. It's still there. So now getting this connection going backwards to the great grandparents. So this is Grandpa Falkner's parents, our great grandparents. Walter and Jessie both died young, in their 60s. So Mum, Auntie Ruth, and Uncle David didn't really know them at all. They had 4 children. Auntie B, Auntie B Field, knew her from living down at what's the name of the place near Croydon, Purley, down Purley Way. Auntie Doris, who never married. Auntie Eva, who never married, and Auntie Gladys, who married. No, this is where I'm going to fail me. Can you help me, Zandra? Auntie Gladys's married name? Can't remember. It's gone. Anyway, doesn't matter. Taylor. No, she was. That was her married name. Anyway, not to worry. I knew I was going to forget. These are all born at 163 New Cross Road. Interesting area again for the family, which I won't go into now, but there's a little bit about it in the chapters that I've read about that was a sort of little family enclave down there. They were married there. Sorry, these were born there. Yeah, that's right. The Crowhurst builders were there at 167. They moved to Cranley Gardens, Wallington, getting out of the centre of London and to Stafford Road. But great grandpa Walter still owned this property, and he let it out to his nieces, and he used to stay there during the week. And Iris Pardell, who I saw just before she passed away, who is related to us, cousin somewhere, and she could actually relate to me how she remembered Walter staying at 163 with them during the week and going back to either Cranley Gardens or Stafford Road at the weekends. And this comes back to what, I remember Mum saying that our grandfather, Leslie, hardly knew his father really because he was away working up in London all week and only came home really at weekends. And that sort of all dovetailed in together as
the home being to 225.
No, 6 Cranley Gardens. No, this is on the other side of the family, David. This is Falkner's. Yeah. Easily done. So this is nearest I've got to a family photo. This is Auntie B's 21st birthday. This is Auntie B here. We all remembered. This is Walter and Jessie, great grandparents. I know pretty much who all these are and how they're connected. Most of them are related by either blood or marriage. 1 or 2 of them are friends. This is Grandpa Falkner here. And we've got Auntie Eva and Auntie Doris somewhere. Oh, there's Auntie Gladys next down there as well, and Auntie Eva somewhere. Oh, there's Auntie Doris. Have I ever got Auntie Doris twice? No. Auntie Doris comes down.
Bottom right.
And Ian Eva's bottom right, and that's Auntie Doris. So they're all dotted around there. That's who they all are. I won't dwell on that one, but we know pretty much who they all are. So Walter, great-grandfather was born at 54 New Kent Road, now demolished. His father was the one, John William is the one that ran the really successful building company, which I won't go into now in any detail, but you know, they did very well for themselves, reached probably a pinnacle around 1900 before falling away somewhat after he retired, when he left it to his sons to carry on. He didn't carry on quite as well as he did. Walter was born at 54 New Kent Road, very quickly moved down to Ossory Road, where the building firm was. So that's that, and this is where the beach connection is confirmed. Emma Beach, mother. This is where Walter would have spent his early childhood, down at this is number 24 Ossory Road. The builder's yard was behind this building, to the rear of this. All demolished now, but thankfully when I went there it was still standing and being used as offices for the Falkner company, which was still carrying on right up into the 1990s, but as a holding company, and no Falkner's directly involved with it. It was Woods that carried it on. But just in passing, interestingly, if you're really interested in the Falkner building firm, all the records, Janet Woods, who sort of oversaw the final winding down of this, was extremely conscientious, and there are several meters of shelving in the London Metropolitan Archives in Northampton Street, where there's several meters of shelving containing all of the extant Falkner building records when the business finally closed. So there's a wealth of information about this company out there still, for those who want to go and know about it. And there's also a blog site done by one of our relations, who's got loads and loads of pictures up of the various buildings that the Falkners did. And I suppose, you know, one that stands out is Government House at Port Stanley. They built that. So you know, they did quite a lot of sort of what you saw more elaborate building projects, the Falkners did, whereas the Crowhurst were more sort of bog standard. Jessie, his wife, she was born at 683 Old Kent Road, not that far away, so we're going down the Old Kent Road now. Butcher's her father was a very successful butcher, and from what I can see from the wills, he was probably the most wealthy that I can find of our relations. When he died, his estate in current terms was worth about £2.7 million. So he did. So yeah, he did very well in his butcher industry, and had quite a lot of property. This is Grandpa Green, as my mother used to call her. I expect Auntie Rita as well. Grandpa Green, she can remember him. He didn't die till 1939. This is Jessie's father. Died in 1939. Outlived several of his children, including Jessie. He was 97 when he finally died, and yeah, left quite a reasonable estate. But this is where. This is 683 Old Kent Road, sort of as of now, although actually that's still standing, but this building here has now been demolished. If you look on the current Google Maps, you'll see that this building's no longer there and the site's being redeveloped. But this is 683 Old Kent Road, and presumably this would have been the butcher shop underneath back in those days. Their marriage certificate, Walter Falkner and Jessie Green, married at Surrey Tabernacle. There's a whole story. By Obadiah Stephanus Dolby, the minister. How about that for a name? So you've got there, I've just been talking about Thomas Green, the butcher. So that was a butcher, and the builder, John William. This is interesting though, or well, it's interesting to me probably. But this isn't the family home. I've read this as Ardonia, but I think it might be Artonia or something like that. But it's clearly the name of a building, a house or something. But all it says is Seaford, Sussex. So what was Jessie Green, born and bred in Lewisham, London, doing down at Seaford, Sussex? I can't find any relations far or near that lived at Seaford. I can only assume that she was doing some sort of maid service down there, which of course was conventionally what the women did in these days prior to their marriage. So I assume that she'd been was working as a maid at this place at Seaford, but in terms of why and how, I guess there's some connection somewhere, probably through Surrey Tabernacle or something like that. I don't know. I just haven't worked it out. But that's quite a surprise on the marriage certificate that she wasn't down at the family home when she got married. The two fathers witnessed the marriage, and they got married Surrey Tabernacle, and that is Surrey Tabernacle, not long before it got demolished in Wandsey Street. This is the second one. Yeah, really big building to hold what was in those days a very large congregation. That's looking a bit tired just before it was demolished. This is probably somewhat artistic license etching of what it looked like once. You can see it had roads around it completely. So you know, quite a building in its day, built in the 1860s. Neither of our great grandfathers were very chuffed about doing this. They thought it was a waste of time, and the place that they were in already was quite adequate. But it got built. The minister there was James Wells. Attracted a very large congregation, not very far away from where C.H. Spurgeon had his very large congregation at Metropolitan Tabernacle. So this part of London was a real Baptist stronghold in those days. And it burned, unlike Metropolitan Tabernacle that's carried on. Surrey Tabernacle burned brightly for probably about 50 or 60 years and closed in 1920. So the original old Surrey Tabernacle in Borough Road only opened in about 1830. This one was built in the 1860s, and the congregation merged with the congregation at Brixton Tabernacle in 1920 under the pastorate of Ernest Rose. So it really came up and went down very quickly. But all the church books of Surrey Tabernacle are still there at Brixton. I went and had a look at them last year, started photographing them, but haven't finished. And of course it's absolutely stuffed full of our relations, and they all intermarried, loads and loads of intermarrying. And you can see this from this picture. This is the deacons at Surrey Tabernacle in 1888. And apart from old Obadiah Stephanus Dolby there, the pastor who came from quite a way away, somewhere up in East Anglia, I think, and Albert Bolden, all the other five are either related to us as blood relations or by marriage. This is Thomas Green, great grandfather, the one who died with the butcher, who died with the large estate. This is Samuel Crowhurst Jr., who wrote the diary, who was brother to his wife, Jessie. So we've got his diary and his father's diary. Thomas King married his sister, and John Rundle in his second marriage married another sister. So yes, married his sister. So and Thomas Carr, I think he married his sister. So this is, and for those who know this, he was related to Harvey Carr and Edward Carr at Bath and Chippenham, so they're all related to each other. So you know, this was, you know, quite a family affair going on there, in amongst a congregation of about 1,000, 1,500 people. The previous pastor was the one that really got the congregation going. His name was James Wells. So in terms of putting on a map where they were, so we've got, well, these are the two places where the Surrey Tabernacles were, the churches. So this is the River Thames, Isle of Dogs. We're now in, you know, to the south of Thames. This is Lambeth, and Bermonds is up here, and this is the Old Kent Road down here. So we've got Jessie, who was where we are. Jesse Green, born here, 683 Old Kent Road, and then they moved down here to Lewisham, 222 Lewisham High Road, and in 1884. Her parents, and she went with them, but sometime after this went down to this place at Seaford. This is 54 New Kent Road, up here where Walter was born, and this is Ossery Road, where the Falkner building factory was, and where he spent his life prior to getting married. And this is where they lived, 163 New Cross Road, down at the bottom of the Old Kent Road, during their early married life, and where his showroom was, and as we were saying, where he was in Brixton Tabernacle, right down there. So that's their London life. Then there was this move down to the Croydon area, between Croydon and Carshalton, initially to Cranley Gardens, and then to Stafford Road, where they both passed away, and they're buried at Bandon Hill Cemetery, which you can see is very, very close nearby. And at the same time, around the same time as they moved to Stafford Road, his father, John William, moved in. So this is the builder, starting his retirement, moved out of London, left it to his sons, and he's moved to this very fine house called Oak Lodge down at Beddington Lane, now demolished, sadly. It's unclear whether he actually built it himself, but you can't help feeling that he must have done. But I haven't got the records of it. They were only there for 3 or 4 years. Daughter May, their last daughter May, married in 1903, and I just wonder whether when May passed away, when May married, they decided that it was right for them to move back close to London. So they did move further north, and they were still attending Surrey Tabernacle in these days, which was quite a long way away from here. So they weren't there for very long. But this background picture that you keep seeing pop up is actually at May's wedding down at Oak Lodge. So these are the homes of Walter Falkner when he first married, 163 Old Kent Road, then went to 6 Cranley Gardens, and then finally finished up in 30 Stafford Road. This is still there. They're on good. This is just a Google Maps picture. Stafford Road's gone. He was a Freemason. Walter was a Freemason, as was his brother William John. Became a Freemason in 1895. Here's his certificate. I've got it just down there, brought it with me, and this is the record in the book. You obviously can't read that, but it tells you where he lived and so on. And it was the Old Boys Lodge he was at. They're in London, yes, with Freemasonry.
Old Boys?
Interesting. I haven't got into the details of this, so I can't really say any more on this. But I do know his brother joined at pretty much the same time. Even in those days, the Falkners were on the telephone, they were getting connected. So even in the 1911 telephone directory, here we've got Walter Falkner, builder and decorator at 163 New Cross Road. You've got his brother Herbert, who was a very successful hardware merchant at 361 Old Kent Road, just across the way from JW Falkner and Son Builders at 24 Ossery Road. These were very close. William John, this is Walter's brother, another son, surveyor. This is Victor Falkner's father, who did a lot of family history for us and who I make good use of. Frank Ninus, the 9th in the family, another brother, quantity surveyor. I think he was an OBE, and was commanding officer in Malta in the First World War. And you know, and they pop up again in 1921. But there's other Falkners around. That's right. The other ones, I don't know. If they're related, it's quite a way. Yeah, it's a professional musician. Interesting one. A whiskey merchant, Francis. Again, don't know these ones. Offshoots of the family. Walter, our great-grandfather, down as a builder, died age 62, abscess of the right lung, septic pneumonia, and something no post-mortem. So you know, he was
The right lung, is that?
oh, Oakley, yes. Oh, yes, and Auntie Gladys, there we are. And Auntie Gladys was the informant, Gladys Oakley, present at death, and that's where she lived all the time. So I'll give you some useful information. Jessie, his wife, again, only 65 when she died, still down at Stafford Road, coronary thrombosis, basically, you know, bad heart, myocardial degeneration, so basically she had heart disease. Again, oh no, this time Doris, Auntie Doris, was the informant, present at death, 30 Stafford Road. And there they are. That's Bandon Hill Cemetery with their. So you've got great grandma and grandpa, and Auntie Doris and Auntie Eva buried in with them. Bandon Hill Cemetery. Walter left a will, so I defer now to my learned solicitor friends and so on. But I suppose I was quite surprised to see. So this is the gross value at today's prices. You know, we're down at £4,107 and £1,601, which today means, you know, Walter, 330k. So not a fantastic estate by today's standards, and dwindled down to a net value of only £129,000. So presumably he had some debts to pay off, did he? Solicitor and what have you?
At least
Yeah,
it wasn't over leveraged.
right. What does that mean? Negative equity.
I have known somebody who couldn't afford to sell a house,
Right.
because he borrowed so much to invest in a number of houses that he paid the capital gains tax on any house. He couldn't sell a house
Right.
and get enough
Enough
money.
money.
To
Oh, right.
pay
Yes,
the
tax.
to pay-
Oh, right. That was a real.
It's probably borrowings if you've got a few properties. Probably interest
Yeah.
rates weren't very high.
Yeah, really stuck. So Jessie was the sole executrix of the will. So Jessie basically took the lot, left everything to her, but then she left a will, interestingly, with almost identical valuations. This time it did go round the family, and we've got Grandpa Falkner's signature here on it. He was one of the executors, along with his brother-in-law, I think, who we got, Leslie Ombersley. That's when they were down at Claygate. Leonard Oakley. So this was Auntie Gladys's son and husband, and someone else there. So anyway, so that's well all nicely typed out, so you haven't got to worry about reading copperplate writing and so on. No, but it basically just divides the estate equally amongst the children. So that's the Falkner side done. Now the Addiscott side, sorry, and this will be, I won't detain you much longer because you need a break. So we've got William and Beatrice. They were first cousins once removed. So they weren't, so they, again, so they, you know, hence they knew each other down in Plymouth. They were related to each other. And this is their family. Just quickly go through it. You got Auntie Beattie, who married David Reeves, who died in 1922. Not quite sure what he died of. I have to get his death certificate to find out, but he died early. Then she remarried Uncle Claude Worthing. William Stewart Oliver, who got killed at Cambrai in the First World War. Auntie Mabel, who married Uncle Douglas down at Matfield in Kent. So we got his autobiography. Our grandmother, Dougie, who died of flu just after the First World War. And then Raymond, who when his marriage was breaking down, came and stayed with us when we were living for a little while at 17 Ripley Road. He turned up as well on the doorstep one day. I'm in his granddaughter is living in Australia, and I'm in contact with her. And then Uncle Edgar, who lived at Maidenhead, married Auntie Phyllis Edwards, lived to a ripe old age, 95, died only in 2000. So we, I think various of us can remember Uncle Edgar and met him when he was down at Maidenhead. Yeah, when you were down with, that's right. That's right.
Wasn't Uncle Douglas that Mum used to say, Grandma, you're very fond of?
Dougie, yeah, yes, yeah. It was a big shock to Grandma. It was the next one, and he died of flu. Yeah, so she lost one brother. You know, it's very sad, really. You know, but this is what families were going through then. Lost one brother in the war, and then just when they thought it was all over, go and lose another one of the flu.
Yeah, we took Mother to visit the Says No grave. Stuart.
No, there's no grave. No,
he was at Cambrai, which is the first major battle with
tanks. Yeah.
But then there was a big German counter-offensive. I think that we could pretty much tell which lines he was in, and I think that the Germans counterattacked him. He'd just been blown to smithereens. So it's just a name on the wall.
Yeah, along with many others.
But
it's interesting to note that that is now being used and taught as history by my daughter-in-law to bring the First World War very much into personal focus for the children, knowing that a relative on our side was at Cambrai.
Yeah.
She used to take a tour each year to the battlefields of First World War, and to the Cambrai Memorial, and point that name out.
All right,
on the memorial.
All right, yeah.
So it's actually been quite poignant in a way.
Yeah. So that's all the brothers and sisters. That's the nearest I've got to a family photo. So if anyone else has got one, that's great. But obviously, this is only part of the family. This is before Edgar and Raymond were born. You know, Dougie's just a baby, and Grandma and Auntie Mabel, and Auntie Beattie, Dolly, as they used to call her. So here we are. There's a skeleton in the cupboard. Grandma Falkner's parents were married in a registry office. No, this is birth certificate. I've stolen my own thunder here.
Yeah.
So this is a birth certificate of William. He was born 3 months after his parents got married at a property associated with his maternal grandparents. So they had to get married in a hurry, and this is his birth certificate. Yes, and if you see their marriage certificate, they were married at a registry office. And interestingly, the witnesses were all from one side of the family. So I guess it's possible the other side of the family didn't see it quite so generously.
But at least I guess, because you hear about it a lot these days, well, 1900s, the mothers would be sent off like their family stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, it all worked out fine, you know, in the end, and happy family. But So he was born 3 months after his parents got married. And this is where he was born, Old Town Street in Plymouth, all blitzed in the war. Don't look anything like that now. Again, they were quite heavily involved, as well as in the docks, in retail, drapery and so on, and the actual place at 3 Old Town Street was a tobacconist and newsagents. Beatrice, she was born at 5 South Hill Buildings, very ordinary road, not there any longer. Family lived there a long while her father was a writer at the dockyard. Herbert Swarfield. Yes, writer, HM Dockyard. So presumably some sort of clerk of some sort there. Herbert Swarfield Rocket, my father, I've looked and I've looked and I've looked. I don't know if anyone else has done. Where on earth does Swaffield come from? Because it goes through various lines. Usually it's like the surname of someone on the female side. No Swaffields anywhere in sight. So, and this is about the third generation of Herbert Swaffield Rocket. So where the Swaffield comes from, I've still got no idea. It'd be really great to find it sometime, because it's obviously come from somewhere. That's not a normal middle name. Yeah. Fulmish Rocket. Yeah. So and yes, so this is the marriage certificate of our great grandparents. So this is of William and Beatrice, of our great grandparents, married at Brixton Tabernacle. Mr. Cornwall was the minister at the time. David William Rocket, one of Beatrice's brothers, and George, I think it's George Addiscott, one of his brothers, were the witnesses. And there we go. So, and you could see at the time they were both living at 181 Norwood Road. So as soon as they got married, off they went to 225 and left the Rocket family at 181. And I think, so although a lot spoken of 225, it was in the family for less long, or the overall family, much less long than 181 just down the road, because they moved into 181 when it was called 1 Matcombe Terrace in about 1880. And I think David, the son of this one, his son was also called David, but he was known by his second name, which was Walter. And he lived there until his death, I think, in 1962. And I don't know if you remember Grandma, or certainly Mum, talking about Borden Walter. She was Maud. I'm going to confuse you all now, but his wife, his second wife, was the same age as her stepson, Walter. So his second wife, Maud, lived on to a reasonably good old age, and the two of them lived together. So you had Maud and Walter living together, and you could easily have taken them as husband and wife because they were about the same age, but it was stepmother and stepson living together. And I certainly remember Mum talking about Borden Walter because Maud had a nasal, spoke through her nose and so on. So there were Borden Walter. It's the sort of thing Grandma Falkner and Auntie Beattie would have taken the mickey out of. So that was them. So they were living at 181, right up till reasonably modern times. Whereas, as far as I know, 225 left the family in 1939 or thereabouts. So before they were married, when they both lived at Plymouth, we had Beatrice living over here. So this is Plymouth Hoe area. This is the area that just got bombed completely during the war, and the Addiscotts lived here. So this road and this road were quite, these were retail areas. So you go and do your shopping around here, and that's where they lived. And when they went to London, all side by side opposite Rockwell Park, in 181 and 225 Norwood Road. That's 225 as already seen. This is 181, which was 1 Matcombe Terrace. Once upon a time. You can see it's the first one in the block. Lloyd George register done in 1910. Told you all about the houses. This is all the financial side of what they're worth and so on. This is the interesting bit here. And if you zoom in on it, it says that it was a 3-story, 225 Norwood Road, 3-story with a back addition, flat zinc roof, small garden at the rear with a side entrance. The accommodation was 2nd floor, 2 rooms, then a half landing to a room and a bathroom and lavatory, hot and cold running water. Hey. 1st floor, 2 rooms, another half landing, 1 room and WC. Ground floor, 2 rooms, kitchen, scullery, then to WC. off the scullery. This is what I found quite interesting. Shabby internal repair, pointing required at the back. So there we go. That was in 1910. So Grandma would have been living in a house of shabby internal repair when she was 10 or 11.
Where to start?
Yeah, there you go. Interesting. Well, that's what the perhaps obviously all things are relative, and that's what the man that was doing the survey thought of it. That's what he thought of it.
Shabby chic.
Yeah. So their death certificates of our great grandparents. Beatrice died of heart failure again and senile decay. So she was obviously going a little bit dotty toward the end, Beatrice. Only 75 though. There we go. 225. Again, see, Auntie Beattie was living with them and present at death. And again, a few years later, husband died. Solicitor's clerk, cardiac failure again, and a cerebral hemorrhage. So paralysis. Yeah, so yeah, stroke. And again, Auntie Beattie there to inform of the death, staying there with her parents in her widowhood. I haven't found the grave yet, but if you want to find it, I know where it is. It's there in West Norwood Cemetery. That's where it is. But I've yet to go and find that. And there we are. Here endeth the first lesson, so you absolutely need a break. So next time we meet up, I can do the great grandparents. Even more fun, even more shenanigans, even more shenanigans. Yeah.
It's interesting what goes around comes around, isn't it? It was Sheila's son last Friday bought a house just down the road from New Cross Road.
Oh, New Cross Road, right? Yeah.
Yeah, literally about 10 minutes.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
By the heads.
Where's the stop recording?
Yeah, no, let's do that first. I'll sign it. Let's just.
It just stopped recording. Yeah.
Yeah, you click on the.
Can't find the mouse.
Stop recording. Oh, so I don't create a breakout session. Oh. No. Go backwards. I'll go back to this.
Oh, you close. It's got to close. Yes.
Stop recording.